We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. I did not see Solo: A Star Wars Story. I can't give a review. Apparently a lot of other people didn't see it either.
It does seem that way. Yeah, from what I'm reading on Facebook, it's and I will only read like the beginning part of anything just in case there might be a spoiler. It's kind of mixed. People loved it or hated it. There's no in between.
It seems mixed. Actually, the reviewers with whom I most often agree have mostly been saying, I thought it was all right. It's like kind of in the middle. I
thought the most interesting comment I heard was they made me believe that this guy was really Solo.
Okay.
Which is, to me, to the reviewer, that was a success.
Yes.
It's really Solo, and therefore that movie, I thought there was no way I was going to ever believe anybody, but
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford was going to be Han Solo, but they made me believe. So,
okay.
I mean, maybe it's good. I don't know. I'll see it for sure.
I'll see it at some point. Probably this week.
Probably.
Yes.
I will not see it until it comes into my home theater.
That's right.
Where I will see it. That's right. The spoilers for Deadpool 2 and Infinity War are very hard to avoid.
Well, no kidding. I mean, they become
I am
memes
navigating
at
them.
this point.
I am navigating. I do not look at anything. I do not. I'm not friends. Like if I'm friends with you on Facebook and you post spoilers, I've already unfriended you many moons ago. So, the reason we're starting this podcast late is because I have a sick son. He is. Last night when I was supposed to be getting ready for the podcast, his fever was like 104.
That is serious. That is
a serious fever, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to be locked up in my home theater for 2 hours.
No.
While my wife, deals with him and then has to get up early in the morning to go to work and everything else. So I just dealt with him. So he is still sick. His fever was 103 a few minutes ago. So I gave him some ibuprofen to knock that down and make him feel better. He's been sleeping all day. So
okay,
we are powering through on this podcast. We're going to do what needs to be done in order to get it done. But this, sometimes life gets in the way, and this is one of those times. So sorry that we're recording at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday Eastern time.
The official podcast will go up at its normal time, hopefully.
Ish.
So, yeah, it should.
Ish. I'm trying. I really am. I feel real bad when it doesn't go out until Sunday afternoon, but I try for Friday mornings. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com, click on the buy. Oh, no, wait, not this. Leave us a comment. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast.
Yes,
is that right?
/AVRant podcast on Facebook.
YouTube.com/AVRant, where you can see our complete 2-hour videos, which I watched a little bit of one the other night.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I wonder what this is, one of the complete ones, the ones that Rob does the whole intros and stuff for, and I was like, I wonder what this looks like. And it's pretty good. I was like,
I try to minimize the amount of time I have to spend on it, so that's as good as it's gonna get for the amount.
No, I am not. I mean, I thought the lip sync was going to be all screwy and everything else, but it's not. It's pretty good, man. It looks all right. I mean, I am a very unpleasant person to look at. I understand that, and I apologize to all of you that want to view me. And if you decide to just put on the YouTube and then like put a piece of paper over that half of the screen, I'm okay with that too.
Isn't that the audio only version at that
But maybe they want to look at you and they want to see the pictures every once in a while, right?
Pictures,
they want to see the pictures. So there could very well be. But the YouTube stuff is not bad. I'm quite impressed, Rob. Good job.
Oh, thank you. I'll mention again, since I only mentioned it at the very end of a podcast and only once, I am putting timestamps for each person's questions in the show notes on YouTube. So if you want to jump directly to someone's question, that's the way to do it now.
Yes. That seems like a lot of work. I want to do that.
I'm writing the show notes anyway, so there it is.
So
People
there it
appreciate it. I've had a few notes
do.
saying I really appreciate it, so there you go. I've set a bad precedent, but there it is.
Now you're stuck with it. Yeah. Believe me, if Rob ever decides to move on from this podcast, that will immediately stop happening, as will all the YouTube everything. I'll be honest with you. I never thought the YouTube was necessary, but we tried for the little videos, and that didn't work. And then Rob wanted to do the big videos, and I was like, well, I'm not doing it.
Well, I mean, it
If you want
mostly
to, you
started
can.
just because we're on Google Hangouts anyway, so once that became YouTube Live, why not throw it up? And then the quality was so bad, we're like,
It
well,
is real bad.
that's going to only hurt us if we leave it that way. So this is how things evolve.
All right. So if you want to contact us directly, you can contact us. Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. Yeah. So I have not had any coffee yet today, and it's 1 p.m. I have made myself a cup of coffee hours ago, and it is still sitting on the counter, which I just now remembered. So at some point, I am going to disappear from this video to go get that cup of coffee.
Really?
I desperately need it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I don't care. I don't care how long the coffee's been sitting out. I'll still drink
Wow.
it. It is cold. I've got like coffee mugs that are like really good thermos type ones, and if I made it yesterday, I'll drink it today. I'm okay with that. As long as the milk hasn't spoiled, I'm okay. All right. So, new shirt, Rob. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah.
Got the logo of my new company, Fearless Mobile Climbing, which has a website, which I'm still working on. So it's not Googleable, but if you put in fearlessmobileclimbing.com, you will get to my website for my mobile wall, and you'll see a picture of me struggling on a route that I was working on in Thailand. A couple of different little routes I was working on in Thailand, but the really hard routes I was doing, I got the person who was taking the pictures did an awful job. They're all blurry, you can't see them. So,
Oh dear.
but the ones I got. So
Well, you'll have to record a new voice ad thing to put at the beginning of our audio podcast for that now instead.
I guess so. Maybe I shall. Maybe I shall do something
Marketing.
like that. Marketing. Yeah. What else? So we want to thank our listeners of the week. Every week, we like to acknowledge those listeners who have supported the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is by going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. There you'll find a PayPal donation site, which will take your little information and all the digits and stuff, and they won't tell us what any of those digits are except for how much money they're going to send us. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have a PayPal. You can just use your credit card, or if you have a PayPal, it's even easier. Just transfer it by PayPal. So we want to thank our listeners who have supported us financially, and that's Marty and Karl. So thank you, Marty. Thank you, Karl, for your donations.
Yeah, Marty, Karl, thank you very much for those donations.
We also have 62 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can sign up for a monthly withdrawal from your account to give to us. A minimum withdrawal, I believe, a month is $1, and
That's
it's
right.
up to infinity. So since you're not Bill Gates, someplace less than infinity is perfectly acceptable to us. All the way down to, actually, if they said 50 cents was okay, we'd be like, yep, we'll take it. So we have 62 patrons right now. We want to thank all of them.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. And thank you so much to our 62 patrons.
That's right. And, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. Those monies go into our coffers to pay for hosting fees and everything else. I don't know if you remember, Rob, but a little while ago, we had a conversation on the podcast where I was like, woo, we're in the black. We're in the black.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, talking to my wife about it. I'm like, oh, I got this big donation drive and everything's great. She goes, oh, good, because you need to pay me. I'm like, what? We're in the black. I don't have to pay you for nothing. She goes, oh, no. Like, oh, crap. So apparently I have been accruing bills that I did not know I was accruing. So I thought I was paying for everything out of the PayPal account. But apparently there has been other accrued bills over the last 6 months. So we are still fine.
Right.
The podcast will continue on. I'm not worried about that. We're operating within some semblance of a budget, I guess. But I thought we were flush after this. After this, we are apparently not flush. But I am very happy for the donation because now my wife is no longer.
Well, we mostly got rid of your
angry.
10-year backlog of bills.
We're not even.
That's what it was paying,
I
so.
think that's. I don't even know. That was the big deal. I think that we did finally get rid of the 10-year backlog. But now she's keeping even closer track to how much money we're spending on things like hosting and bandwidth and all this other stuff. So anyway, I don't really care. For you listeners, this is not a guilt trip. You guys do as you will. We will do the podcast regardless. I did it for 8 years before I think I ever received anything, so don't worry about it. But if you do want to support us, figure out some way to do it and let us know what you've done. If it's financial, don't worry, we will mention you. But if you do something else, let us know. And Toby did that by buying 2 receivers, an Integra DTR 40.4 and that Yamaha RX V583 from Accessories for Less, and he let them know it was because of us. So they now know that our podcast is sending people their way. So that helps us out somehow. I don't know how it does it.
Got you a receiver. That's not bad.
That's true. That's true. And good. Speakers. I got speakers from them too. That's right.
There you go. Right. Well, Toby, congrats on those purchases, and thank you very much for mentioning us to Accessories for Less.
We do appreciate it. Now, in the news here, Onkyo announced 3 new RZ series AV receiver models. I thought they already did their announcements, and they were all the same from last year, but now they've got new stuff?
No, that was Yamaha. Yamaha was what we talked about last week. This is Onkyo. Onkyo, we talked about their non-RZ series, because they announced that previously, and now this is their RZ series, their beefed-up series.
All right, so the RZ830... the RZ730 and RZ630. They're $1,700, $1,100, and $900 respectively, and they all have 9 built-in amps.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, the 830 and 730, the big ones, can be expanded to 11 speakers by adding an external amp. Those top 2 models also get THX Select certification, which is meaningless to me. As for the new features, they can now interface with a Sonos Connect device to be controlled directly with the Sonos app. And they still have Chromecast built in, DTS Play-Fi, and Flare Connect, AirPlay, and basically every method of connecting wireless speakers that isn't that Yamaha MusicCast thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So why do we care about the 830 over the 730 if they are both basically the same thing?
More power, beefed up power supply. It's got the fancy front plate that the 730 doesn't have. That's about it. Feature-wise, pretty much the same.
Tell you what, dude, I'll be honest with you. I mean, just if you're going to go 9 channels,
the
630 looks pretty good.
Well, they also have the $800 one in the non-RZ series right below it, that the 787 that we talked about a few weeks ago. That one's got the 9 amps built in as well.
Byron wanted to point out a new product from that miniDSP is offering for pre-order. We know how much we love pre-orders around here. It's a Wi-Fi to USB adapter to make it much more convenient to program and control your miniDSP device before you have to plug your miniDSP into your computer with the USB cable to make any changes, which could mean a lot of plugging and unplugging, and if you're doing trial and error. Now with the miniDSP YDG, Y-Dong? I'm going to call it the Y-Dog. miniDSP Y-Dog, you can use the software on your computer and upload the changes over Wi-Fi. It even works with the She Who Shall Not Be Named to quickly change between presets or mute your miniDSP device. She Who Shall Not Be Named starts with an A and ends with a, I'll just give it space here, Lexa. Ends with Alexa.
That's probably enough to activate it.
Probably. Sorry, guys. She Who Should Not Be Named. Dude, that sounds annoying, to be honest with you. I do not want anything in my home theater that to just randomly be
not only that, multiple places to control the volume. That always works out well.
How could that possibly go awry? Yeah. So the Y-Dog, miniDSP Y-Dog. I like that. Y-Dog. All right. Karl. Netflix isn't renting Ultra HD Blu-ray discs by mail yet, but Redbox has begun carrying some 4K Blu-rays in their kiosk. I have noticed that as well. Mm-hmm. I went there. I go there about when I'm walking past about once a week. I'll check to see what they got, see if there's anything interesting in there. And I did notice that 4K was one of the options. Apparently, though, and I did not know this, only 4 titles they have to start, and only in 6 test markets. And apparently, I'm one of them.
Yeah,
they're charging $2.50 a day, so a 50-cent premium over the 1080p Blu-rays, which is not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
And I did want to mention, because they're not super well known, if you are interested in getting Ultra HD Blu-ray discs by mail, there is rent4k.com. And that's all they do. All they do are Ultra HD Blu-ray discs by mail. So they're your alternative to Netflix if the disc by mail thing. I feel like I would run out of Ultra HD Blu-ray discs pretty quickly based on what's out there right now, what I want to actually watch. It's growing library.
I mean, unless you get like a whole, couple of seasons of something, then maybe that would work. But yeah, who's got the time? Steve the Geek from Next Gen Home Theater. That's a podcast, right?
No, that's a website.
Asks, is this the end of DTS-X? Steve maintains the list of discs with Atmos DTS-X and or 4K. This knows that there are no upcoming releases using DTS-X. Meanwhile, the number of titles with Atmos is steadily increasing, and while it used to be the case that new movies mostly included Atmos, while catalog titles mostly use DTS-X, now even the catalog titles are using Atmos. So, yeah. That's because DTS-X kind of
like good.
Yeah.
Rather just have the one, especially since there's quite a few Atmos soundbars that don't handle DTS-X.
Yeah. That
type of thing. So I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah.
I really have in my heart a special place for DTS. I've always went back with even VHS. I think. But certainly DVDs. I would seek out DTS tracks and stuff like that on them, and always seem to be the superior one to me. But they certainly, I don't know if they just don't have quite the infrastructure, but they haven't been able to respond to market trends as quickly as Dolby has. So Dolby is also a lot older, and
bigger and more money
and bigger, and that shows. Now, for the first time ever, THX has publicly shared their original sheet music, handwritten by Dr. James A. Moorer in 1982, of their distinctive Deep Note logo theme that first debuted in 1983 with the release of Return of the Jedi. That's the
That's right.
Thing. Yeah.
That is a large chord. That is many notes in a chord.
Yes. So I guess the notes start in one place and then they cross. Some of them go up and then down. Some of them go down then up.
It's kind of interesting that he just wrote it as lines, handwritten. But you can see the final note. The final note is actually fully demarcated there.
Right. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Some comments here. Some idiot named Tom Andre looked up some brushes specifically. I did not look this up. This came across my phone. And I was like, because it was from some vinyl thing, right? And it was like, the must-have items for your record player. I'm like, how about a garbage can? Looked up some brushes specifically made for cleaning vinyl records and wound up finding an article recommending 8 different accessories, including the groove washer, an oversized brush pad, which looks a lot like an eraser with a microfiber thing kind of stapled to it, for $30, and a Japanese sticky ball of glue for cleaning your stylus needle for $40. I am completely unaware of what this. I would not use that. That thing looks very strange.
It seems like it's just a little silicone sticky rubber, and it's tiny. Like you're just sticking the needle of your record player.
Needle.
So you just kind of touch it to that, and then whatever gunk is on your needle will get stuck to the little silicone ball instead.
Or whatever gunk is stuck to the silicone ball will now be transferred to your needle.
It could go.
You decide.
Could be $40.
So, anyways, it made me think of it because we were talking about washing.
That's right.
Records the other day, and I came across that article, and I was kind of laughing at it. There were some really ridiculous things in there too, But.
Aren't there always?
Chris on Twitter says he's all caught up with AVRant. By all caught up, he means he has now listened to every available episode. I wonder how many are available. It's got to be
quite a few.
I think you can just go back on our website and click.
There is a point where it stops.
And that's because at the very beginning, I was hosting the files on the server. Like I didn't host them at another place, and I was filling up the server. And Clint's like, "Man, what are you doing? You're killing me." I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I was doing. I didn't know that was a problem." And he honestly didn't either. But we kind of figured it out. Switched over to Libsyn, and hosted them there. But the old ones, I contacted Libsyn, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll let you upload all those old files and give you new links and everything else. It'll be." It was going to be like $200 or $300. Nah, you lost your mind. I'm not doing that. No one cares about the old stuff.
That is some quite outdated information. Although it would be cool to hear Dina again. So,
you can hear. I've got them on DVD. I have every podcast I've ever.
There you go.
Done.
We should sell the archives.
The archives. Maybe like that. Didn't somebody just sell archives of letters for like a $1.something billion or something? Snape. What's his name?
Oh, Alan
Hans
Rickman?
Gruber. Yes.
Yeah.
He just sold he's passed.
Oh, that's what that was. I saw
they
some
had
little
a big box of letters of correspondence of his, people talking about it. And it's got like all the scripts he's ever had, all annotated by him and stuff like that. It's going to be like that, except instead of 1.9 billion or whatever it was, it's going to be like
$1.90,
25 cents, 25 cents at the garage sale. So, anyways, he's all caught up. He's now finding it less fun to pass his time at work. He's feeling like he should buy more stuff and then take our advice to ignore the internet for a while just so he can build up a backlog of episodes again. That's one way to do it, dude. You just, I guess, email Rob. He will write back to you large swaths of text.
Don't say that.
I love you, Rob. I love you.
I try to respond when I can, but I can't promise.
No,
it'll be on the
and
podcast, though.
If you ask a question, it will be on the podcast.
It'll
guaranteed.
be on the podcast.
And sometimes, even if you don't ask a question, it might be on the podcast. If you just say something like that HDMI guy. All right, let's get to the questions here, Mark. To start off with, Mark's issue resolved itself on its own after an apparent automatic app update, but his original question gives us an opportunity to potentially help other NVIDIA Shield Plex users. So if you got NVIDIA Shield and you're using Plex, listen up. Mark purchased a new NVIDIA Shield. He connected it via HDMI to his Denon receiver, and he hardwired it to his network. The first thing he did was install the latest firmware updates, and then he launched the Plex app. Mark already had a collection of MKV movies that he had created with Make MKV. He had made two versions of each backup disc, a 1.1 version with no video compression and full lossless audio, and a second compressed version with just stereo audio. Up until he got the Shield, he had been using his PC with the Plex media player to play the movie files, and it was working just fine, passing along the DTS HD master audio and Dolby True HD to his Denon receiver. So he was getting lossless audio. I'm guessing he's not going to after this. But when he went to play those same files using the Plex app on the NVIDIA Shield, he got an error message saying media server connection lost. He turned off bitstream audio output. The movies would play, but his receiver showed mult channel in, or mult CHN. The sound was messed up. If he changed the settings to force direct play, everything worked for a few seconds, but then the Plex apps would crash. A couple days later, he decided to give Plex on the Shield another try. To his surprise, the UI looked totally different, and when he set the audio output back to bitstream, everything worked just fine. He's happy but confused. The Shield didn't say it was sending error logs to NVIDIA when the Plex app kept crashing. Did they maybe push an update because of those? No, I guess. No, I doubt it was because of just you. But I mean, I'm sure there isn't like a big red flashing light at NVIDIA that's like it's like some dude's crashing their app over and over again. He seems real frustrated based on we took over all his webcams and now we can see him. He's very angry. But you surely weren't the only one having the problem, I would guess.
Right. So actually, when I had the chance to go over to Paul McDonald's place and play around with his NVIDIA Shield and getting Plex set up, there's some idiosyncrasies with the setup there. So the major issue that we came across is out of the box, it includes a Plex app.
Okay.
And as soon as you launch that Plex app, it also attempts to get you to set up a new Plex server, because unlike most playback devices, the NVIDIA Shield can also be a Plex server in addition to being the playback app, which is unusual. So automatically it gets you to set up a Plex server, which you can skip. But the thing is, most other playback devices like a Roku or an Xbox or whatever, when you launch an app, if there's an update available, it usually something or it won't even launch, right? It'll say like, you need to update this app before we can proceed. Right. But the NVIDIA Shield doesn't do that. So
it just goes.
It just goes. And I don't know if that's because it also works as a server and that gets updated less frequently or whatever the situation, but it didn't do that. It didn't do that on Paul's. It doesn't sound like it did that on Mark's either. If you go to the Google Play Store, the Google App Store, you can look up Plex and you'll find that there is an update. The problem is, if you already proceeded with the one that came out of the box, in our case, over at Paul's place, it was like, nope, can't update. Unable to update. I was like, great. This is fantastic. On top of that, I had because since Paul doesn't have his own Plex server, I attempted to log into mine. Okay, so I've logged into my server. That actually worked. Then I went looking for an update, and it was like, can't update the app. So I'm like, okay. So I uninstalled the Plex app, which you can do manually, uninstall it. And then I was able to install the one from the store, the new one, the updated one, that installed. And then when it did that, things were working. So it sounds like, Mark it automatically updated because he didn't do anything manually, but
Sure.
somewhere in the background after a couple of days it automatically updated, which is how these things go. So that was working, but then I was like, okay, I don't really want to leave Paul attached to my Plex server, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to temporarily set up a fake Plex server for Paul, and we'll go from there. And that way, if he ever does it, it's already set up for him, attached to his email address and all that kind of stuff. Well, good Lord, trying to like deactivate my server and activate his new temporary server was like seemingly impossible. So what we discovered was you had to like dig way into the settings. You had to go into the app data and the user data, and you had to erase everything manually. You had to get like, and it wasn't like you couldn't just uninstall the app and reinstall it. That didn't do it. You had to manually go into like essentially where like in your internet browser where your cookies would be or something like that. You had to dig into the darn thing, find every last scrap of Plex, erase it, and then start from scratch. And then it did work. It did work. But man, oh man, it was not user-friendly. So just a forewarning, I mean, I've highly recommended using the NVidia Shield as a server and the playback device because it does it really well once it's all going. But yes, the warning is you have to uninstall stuff, uninstall everything, dig through, look for the app data, look for the user data, manually get rid of it all, and then start fresh. That's the advice.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Or you could just turn it off and come back in a day or two.
Wait, just wait.
Just wait until it does its automatic midnight update or 2 a.m. update or whatever.
But it is a little strange, and yeah, I could if somebody got flustered by that, I certainly did. So yeah.
Brian, for measurement microphones or auto setup mics, we previously suggested using a camera tripod or a mic stand, correct? Which brands and models do we use and recommend? I have an on-stage stands for my microphone that I'm using right now, and I have a Sunpack tripod, and I guarantee you both those two things were the cheapest things I could find on Amazon at the moment.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what I do. Because if you use it the way I use it, and first of all, you're never going to use it as much as I use it. I use it once a week to hold my camera. That's right there. The camera that I'm looking at is on that thing. You're going to use it 3 times a year. If it breaks, but you can still put it together in a way that it'll stay still for a few seconds, that's good. That's all you need. You do not need a perfectly robust, high quality, whatever. No. This thing is rarely used. Go cheap. Go cheap as humanly possible.
Yeah, very much so. Up here in Canada, I have one that's from Yorkville. You can find them in the States too. So yeah, just in case people aren't super familiar, when we say a boom on a mic stand, it's just the extendable arm.
Yeah.
So the vertical part of it can be off to your side, and then there's the horizontal arm that you can adjust to whatever angle, and that sticks out. So like you've almost certainly seen people playing a guitar using a mic stand with a boom in front of their face, so that the vertical part of the stand isn't directly in front where their guitar is.
Sure.
So yeah. Honestly, just go to like Amazon or whatever and find the cheapest one. When I looked it up just before the podcast, there's the brand Samson. Samson.
Sure.
They had a nice looking little tripod mic stand with a boom arm for $20. That's, I mean, when we're talking about the setup microphone, those are really lightweight microphones, and there will be no problem.
Literally grams.
Yeah.
I think is an adequate way of describing them. They are
I mean, if you were using a full size proper like condenser mic or something along with like a pop filter on top of it, kind of like Tom's and that, like maybe you'd want something a little bit more sturdy. Possibly I could see someone thinking that, but for your setup microphone, those things are super duper light. The absolute cheapest mic stand will definitely do. I mean, heck, Odyssey includes cardboard with it, which is sufficient to hold it, although if you can use one with a boom, it's great because you can get everything out of the way and get it at the exact angle and height that you want and all that fun stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. The big thing with, especially booms is that if you've got something like that, my mic stand is super cheap, which means that if I want this thing to stick way out, I have to take those ankle weights that you buy and they never ever weigh. I put the ankle weights at the other side because if not, the whole thing falls over.
Yep.
So that's kind of what you're getting. You're paying for extra weight and
That's right.
better balance and that sort of thing. So,
Oh, yeah.
my microphone. I don't know if you guys can see this, probably, but it's got like, basically this part right here, the black. Can they see this, Rob? I can't see.
Yeah, I can see it on my end, but we'll
all right, so right here, normally the microphone part would just stick right into here. There'd be a little
clip.
But I've got this extra little jobby on here, which is a shock mount, so I can touch my microphones without it transferring sound to the mic. That adds a lot of weight, and that means that I can't have the stand has to be right next to me the whole time, because if I extend it this way any further, it falls over. And it's either that or put the ankle weights, and if the ankle weights fall off, then everything goes over.
Now your mic's kind of far from your mouth and you're getting quieter.
Oh, whatever, Rob, slow down. Jonathan asked, Tom said he had a list of gear he'd buy if he moved to a new house. So what's on the list? Tom no longer has that. Tom was speaking from the past. Tom was talking about when he moved from an apartment to a house, his first house, and that was before I really started working for. Not really. It was before I started working for Audioholics. I started working for Audioholics because I got the gear and then started making the DIY absorption panels, and then wrote an article about it, and that's what got me the job at Audioholics. So. Yeah, and I was updating that constantly. Nowadays, I'll be honest with you, I am so out of the loop as far as what's a good price to sound ratio and that sort of thing. I mean, I know the stuff I've heard in the past, and I know the stuff I hear now. But I often, I don't have a budget saved up for more speakers or any of that stuff. I would have to really think. It would probably take me. What I would probably do is I'd probably end up buying a bunch of Focal, like little birds or like tiny birds or bitty birds, whatever, just to have something in here.
Okay.
And just to have sound, just to have surround sound. And then I would spend the next year listening to stuff and researching myself. I mean, it would take me at least that long to get to a proper price comparison, because that's what I was constantly doing. I was looking at features,
Right.
I was looking at prices, and new things would come out and that sort of thing. I feel like the market has settled down quite a bit as far as speakers are concerned, because subwoofers were coming out hot and heavy when I was. That was right when like Elemental Designs and all these sort of fly-by-night garage people were doing things. So that stuff has kind of gone away because SVS kind of ran them all out of business, to be honest with you.
Still got the other internet direct brands that are doing quite nicely.
No, I'm not saying,
Redbox.
no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the, hey, you can get, 10 hertz out of my refrigerator sub, pre-order it now, and I will personally build it for you to your specifications. Like, yeah, sure you will.
So if you were starting from scratch, just moving into a new house, you don't have a go-to list?
I don't, not really. No, I don't. I'd be honest with you, after hearing Rob talk about this year too so dang much, I would probably want to take a listen to those.
Give him an audition?
That would be on my list of things to audition. I would also spend some time listening to some higher-end Kefs, because I'm interested in
absolutely.
those. I would be interested in Revels.
Yep.
I would be interested in probably higher-end RBHs.
Oh, yes.
Those would be on my list of
well, heck,
things
maybe
to
even
buy.
their new, the Impression Elite versions. I mean, those are using the MC drivers, and those were nice. So
yeah, I could get behind those somewhere in that vicinity. But I would probably still be looking at SVS subs. I mean, unless I got a real big place, which seems unlikely. But those are kind of my go-to. I'm not super interested in going back and doing Aperion again. I like my Aperion speakers fine, but I would want to have a change. Yeah. Unlike other people who have brand loyalty, I'm like, I already did that. Let's do something new.
Let's try for fun. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm similar. I mean, I would, of course, still have Ascend on my list, like, especially if I'm recommending to someone else, right? I'm going to definitely recommend, as long as they don't care about the looks, then the SE series. And if you want something considerably higher end and maybe try the ribbon tweeters, then that, the Sierra series and that. But like for myself, if I were doing it again and I had a similar type of budget, I'd probably be looking at Focal. If I could stretch up to that Electra BE series, Because the one thing that can do that the Ascend Sierras that I have, they can play even louder, that Focal BE series. So if assuming
you sit
I
like 2 feet away from your speaker.
I know. I'm assuming I move to a house with a much bigger room, but I fully intend to keep what I have with my Sierra speakers. There's no intention to change. I mean, anybody who's been listening for any length of time, obviously on the AV receiver side, it's going to be pretty obvious. We're going to be recommending like a Denon X4300 if you can still find one, 4400 if you can't. That's going to cover almost everyone's needs. If you need an extra amp, we're going to point you to Emotiva or Monoprice, right? It's like,
right.
Yeah, those are the go-to solutions. On the video side, though, I was actually having a conversation with Lee Overstreet on Twitter. We went back and forth quite a bit because he's, of course, been waiting to pounce on an OLED at some point. He really wants to get that. But then we were talking because he also has a den on the other side of his living room. And he's like, yeah, sometimes we like to have 2 things going, one in the living room, one in the den. But I'd also like to be able to share the sources because they only have like one set of sources. And then apparently his AV receiver like kicked the bucket, which I'm sad to hear. So he was looking into that. So we got into the whole, 2 HDMI outputs. But then if you're looking in the lower price ranges, the ones that have the 2 HDMI outputs are usually mirrored. They're not independent HDMI outputs, which means you can only play the same thing in both rooms at the same time. And furthermore, if you want to retain full surround sound, in Lee's case, it would be in his living room, but then you feed the same source via the mirrored HDMI output to the other room, you end up with lowest common denominator, right? If you're plugged straight into a TV or into a stereo soundbar or something, then both rooms only get stereo. So we got into that whole thing. So I was like, one of my go-tos, if you're setting up a second room and you just want something simple, but it will allow you to have the same source with full surround sound in both rooms, everything going all at the same time. I'm like, it's pretty hard to beat those TCL 6 Series TVs because they do Dolby Vision, they do HDR10. They even hit a full 1,000 nits now, which is like crazy. And so the 65-incher for under $1,000, the 55-incher for $600. I'm like, it's pretty hard to beat that. And then for the soundbar, it'd be those Sonys that I like to recommend now. Was it HT? I forget the letters, but the 9000F, the 9000F soundbar. Yes, it's $600. But it allows you to retain full Atmos and DTS-X from a soundbar setup that you could put beneath that TV. So those are like my go-tos now on the video side.
All right. All right, Ted. Ted has an update. Everybody hold on to shorts.
Yeah.
Ted's updating. Now, those of you who don't know who Ted is one of our longtime listeners and has got some on-wall speakers that are very high-end, very good speakers, but they are on-wall, and he's had some issues with imaging. Ted tried towing in his legacy audio silhouette on-wall speakers. He used some wooden wedges, and he managed to get the phantom center image sounding sharper, but it still didn't entirely fix this issue. He's still hearing quite a distinctly separate left, center, right separation without the cohesive imaging he gets if he simply sits further away. Running Odyssey several times didn't change the situation. So the very last thing he could try would be using the speakers in a different room, as well as pulling the speakers away from the walls just to see if the imaging changes, although that won't ever be a practical solution since the whole point is for these to be on-wall speakers. But Ted might end up with a solution anyways. He might be moving.
Yup.
After all of this. So if they get a new house, he'll have to make sure there's a larger room he can use as his theater so that he can sit further away. Okay, let's do that. Let's just get the bigger house. Let's build the house around the speakers. Let's just do that. Let's that be the thing.
You do recall going back, because we knew Ted's room size before this whole Odyssey
We said
began.
that these speakers were too big for this room.
And we were like, you don't need speakers that big.
Nope. Don't need them.
Really don't.
Now, look what happens. You have to buy a new house.
You have to buy a new house because
for your
speakers were too big. But honestly, do you have any idea what could be causing this at this point? Like, have we not exhausted every?
We have exhausted. It's been far from a way exhausted. At this point, I mean, I mean, the only thing that really occurs to me as being a real thing is that they have such narrow dispersion that their tweeters are so pinpoint precise that it's almost like electrostatic in nature, and that him sitting this close means that he gets to hear each speaker individually, which would normally be it's just that would be a plus. That would be they are super accurate. They are not they're able to do this, but he's hearing it so precisely that he doesn't feel like this is a cohesive image.
Yeah, like
whereas
the left
the only the distance is just changing shortening that angle so that now they're just physically, as far as angles are concerned, closer to each other. Therefore, he hears it better. I mean, the next solution for this problem is not wedges or moving them off walls. It is to get new speakers.
Or in his case, an entirely new room.
Well, that is the real solution is that these are not the right speakers for this room. I mean, I hate to say that, but that is really we can make it work. I feel a lot it's very similar about my Hyperion towers. I assumed that when I moved back to the States, or when I bought my next house, I would have a big room for a home theater, or a bigger room for a home theater. I do not. And these towers, I feel, are too big for this room. And I have a harder time placing them than I would if they were bookshelves. And I feel like the imaging in here could be a lot better. That's what I feel. But these are the speakers I have, and I'm stuck with them, and I'm fine with that. But Ted bought these speakers specifically.
Well, he went through several options before arriving on these.
And he loves them, and therefore I feel like he's doing everything in his power to make these speakers work for him. And if it takes getting a new house, well, I guess that's where we're at.
Actually, you might be entirely right about it just being the dispersion. Because, I mean, like, what he's describing is, in between the left speaker and the center speaker, not even getting all the way over to the right speaker. Just there, they're not, like, blending in that directly in between part until he moves farther back. At which point, even with a narrow angle of dispersion, you would be within the cone of both speakers by moving farther back.
And that's what I feel. That's about the only thing I could. Is if it's not there, then the problem lies between ears and not between speakers.
Yeah, because it is kind of like it sounds like a summing issue, but not your typical summing issue of the drivers within the speaker, but rather from speaker to speaker, not summing together into a cohesive whole, that they're remaining separate. And I mean, it is the case that most ribbon tweeters have very narrow dispersion.
Right.
It's unusual that you have one, like in the case of
what would be really weird?
What?
If the center speaker's tweeter was out of phase.
Oh, it's the center is to blame? Yeah.
If the center channel was wired out of phase, that could also explain some of this.
He did mention, though, that when he's just using the Phantom, he's still getting, he's getting a sharp just in the middle when it's exactly, but as soon as it starts panning, it starts to break apart, even when it's that. So I think you're right. I think it's you need to be farther away so that the dispersion cones can sum together for you. I mean,
alternatively, in the room that you're in, push them closer together, I guess.
Right, yeah.
That would be the other thing.
Yep.
All right, Ted's been using a DefTech SuperCube 3 subwoofer, a tiny 11-inch cube with a 7.5-inch driver and two 7.5-inch passive radios with a 650-watt amp in his 30 by 17 by 10-foot living room. He has it in a corner. It's strictly for music. It's been decent, but Ted would like to replace it. Isn't he moving?
Yeah.
So, no is the answer.
Wait until you've moved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're not allowed to buy anything else until you move. That's how it works. Now that you're moving, all spending is cut off until you move, and then we figure out where you're at, and then this ends up being
and we get what's appropriate for the actual room you're in.
That's right. So no, you can't buy anything, Ted. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
However, for anyone else who has a tiny sub and wants a replacement,
right, he wants an itty-bitty sub. Well, this is a pretty big room, 30 by 17 by 10, and he wants another tiny sub.
Yeah, he still wants it to be small. He wants to keep the price to around $500.
Well, there's not a lot of options.
There aren't a ton of options.
$500 and can fill this room. So,
well, I mean, nothing is going to pressurize this room. So let's put that completely out. I mean, at that size and price, nothing is going to pressurize this room. So we'll put that completely out of our minds. But something that just won't hurt itself in this room would be nice.
Right.
What do we got?
Well, I mean, $500. It has to say $500.
$500.
If it wasn't $500, I would say the JL Audio, the E series.
That's not going to be $500.
So I said,
if
if
it's
it
not
wasn't
$500,
$500, that's what I would say. That's like those guys are only like $1,000. They're not that expensive.
Yeah, I don't actually know the price, but yeah.
What's what they were announced at when the last time I
Right.
saw them was about $1,000. Because I feel like those were pretty small, and they got massive drivers.
Yeah,
in.
small, yeah, but not $500.
Not
Definitely
$500.
more.
Well, the only one that I can think of off the top of my head would be one of the SVS, the SB-1000 if he wants the small one. But because the 2000 is going to be like $800, isn't it?
Oh yeah. No, the 2000 series is well over $500. I mean, the PB-1000 would be kind of nice as far as the price goes, but it definitely doesn't fit
Too
the
big.
small
Yeah, that's not small.
description. Nobody would look at that and go, "Oh, that's small." Well, other than someone who's used to the refrigerator size sub, they would consider it small. But any normal person would not consider a PB-1000 small. So I mean, the SB-1000, it's $500. It won't hurt itself. It won't fully contend with this room size either, though. So I mean, there are some alternatives like Shoes VTF-1. It's currently the Mark III. You can get it for $420 right now because it's on sale during Memorial Day sale, but it'll be under $500. I don't know if you would consider it small, though. It's 15 inches wide, 18 inches tall, and 17 inches.
That's not small. That's not small. That's an AP500 basically, right about the same size as the EP. That's not small. That's the same size as the PB-1000.
Well, it's a little bit smaller than the PB-1000.
Barely.
But not tremendously.
If you put them right next to each other, you say, oh, they're about the same size.
Yeah, it's not as deep. It's not as deep. But so I mean, there's RSL's SpeedWoofer 10S. It's $400. Again, I mean, it's 15 by 16 by 17.
Still not real small.
Not exactly what I would call small. It's
for
small.
$500.
It's not an 11-inch cube. That's for sure.
The real answer to this question is you're not allowed to buy anything, Ted. You gotta live with this.
Yeah, we've already said. But I mean, for everyone else though, who's like, I want something small and $500 or less that can work in a fairly large room. No, we're not going to pressurize it, but that can just work. I mean, I don't know. I guess you have to go with the SB-1000.
I can't think of another one that's not going to break itself trying.
Exactly.
Or make weird noises.
Yeah.
Really, the solution, if you want to have a small sub in a big room, is to save up more money. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
To get up.
You got. I mean, to get something that can. I mean, not even really to pressurize the room. If you want small and in this and be able to get out some decent bass in this room.
Right.
And
it's going
to cost you some money. It still won't pressurize, but you could get there. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Cesar's room is 1250 cubic feet, and it's enclosed. So that's pretty small.
Yes.
So he wants full bass pressurization, but he'd like to keep the budget under $1,000. He's considering an SVS PB-2000, but would dual PB-1000 actually have more output? You could actually go with SB-1000s in duals in here, and they would be small. I mean, they would be small.
Yeah.
You got to understand, if you do not build a box of this thing, then you're not going to be, you don't have no idea what you do yourself. Yeah. This takes up more room than you think it's going to take up. All right. Grab an end table, not a the end table, like a good size end table, and then put it someplace in this room and say that's your sub. If you're going for duals, I would suggest in the room this size, because with the dimensions, it's got to be what, like 10 by 11 or something like that, or 10 by 12.
Something in that range. Yeah, I mean 1250 isn't huge at all. So yeah.
So I mean, I think space is at a premium. The other option is to expand your budget slightly and get the cylinder subs.
Ooh,
which would.
I mean, it saves you floor space. I mean, it's way more output than you need. So, I mean, first, the PB-2000 is completely unnecessary on this room size.
Oh, yeah. The PB-1000s are fine, too. But, I mean, not fine, but they will absolutely pressurize this room. But I think they're too big.
Possibly.
Physically too large for what you're going... I mean, you're going to end up with two of these things and go, uh-oh, where do I put my chair? You know what I mean? I mean, if you're going to put a couch in this room, I think you can't put two of these, two PB-1000s in there. Build the box.
Build the cardboard model. Make sure they're going to fit. So directly answering his question, he's worried about the output. So first of all, 1,250 cubic feet, you don't have to worry about the output.
No.
Either of these options has more output than you would ever need, so it's a moot point. But would dual PB-1000s actually have more output than a single PB-2000? If they were across the room from one another, it should be about the same. You get 3-4-ish more decibels output from the 2000. At every frequency, it's about 3-4 decibels louder than a single PB-1000. So by having two PB-1000s across the room from each other, you get about 3 decibels more output. So they're very comparable. If you were to stack the two PB-1000s or have them directly side by side, basically working as one sub, you get 6 decibels more output. At that point, they would be louder than a single PB-2000. But you want duals. And if you go for dual PB-1000s, which fit your budget, and you get duals at that point, we're worried about the physical size, but we'll leave that to you to make sure that it will fit. The dual subs gives you the ability to have much more uniform bass throughout your room. So that's very important, and the output is of no concern at all. So that's the way to go. Get the duals.
I mean, but the dual SB-1000s in this space, I feel like, have enough output as well. They just don't play quite as low as the PB-1000. So if you are really worried about sub 20 hertz bass, then try to make room for those PB-1000s.
Yeah.
But if you're worried about floor space, then get the SB-1000s. But either set of subs, I think, will give you more than enough output for your space.
Yep.
He asked, do we have any recommendations for other subwoofer brands that we would favor in this setup? It's $1,000, right? Duals for $1,000.
That's what we'd like.
No.
I mean, there are alternatives that are very, very similar. There's Monoprice's Monolith 10-inch, which is almost identical to the PB-1000, including in price and size and output and extension and all that. So that's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you just like the looks of one of them better, by all means, opt for whatever you like the looks of. But very similar. HSU, that VTF-1 Mark III that I mentioned in our last question.
Still big.
Big. It's a teeny bit smaller. It's a little bit less expensive. It doesn't hit quite as like 22, 23 hertz instead of the actual 19 that the PB-1000 or the Monolith gets to. So you're giving up a little bit of money and gaining a little bit of size to not go quite as deep. It's very, very comparable. What else? Like a VTF-2 from HSU would be considerably larger and it would be more expensive. So not much reason to consider that. And Rhythmic, like the LV-12R, very, very comparable in output and extension and size, but it's a little bit more expensive. So why? Because you're not really gaining anything terribly useful in this. So yeah, I'd say it's honestly between the SVS and the Monoprice Monolith. If that size is okay, if you need the smaller size, you got to go SB-1000.
I got the SpeedWoofer too from RSL.
Yeah, but at this, that doesn't dig as low. That's a 25 hertz sub. So.
Yeah. No, we would recommend SVS. Basically, the short version of that is get SVS because that's the one that's the best bang for your buck. Jordan added some acoustic panels to his theater, and he was astonished by how much difference they made. However, after putting up all the panels, he's finding that his left surround speaker sounds much more prominent than his right surround speaker. His right wall is flat with some doors on it, but the left wall juts into the room just in front of the left surround speaker, so he figures he's getting an extra reflection off of that jut in versus the left versus no reflection on the right. He tried adjusting the trim levels of the surround speakers, but no dice. The left surround was still more noticeable than the right surround. Is there anything he can do to fix this? Now, I am still having a hard time seeing what the heck he's talking about.
So, unfortunately, I think he intended to send a picture of the left surround, but because I had two...
He said the back and the right.
Yeah, I had 2 images of the right, like duplicate.
Yeah.
So I think he intended to send a picture of the left, but it just didn't reach us. So unfortunately, we can't see what's actually happening on the left surround. But the description was, fairly. He's like, I've got this jut out coming into the room, so there's an extra, basically like an extra wall or kind of like a corner that the left surround is adjacent to, as opposed to the right surround, which is just on basically a flat wall. So he's thinking that extra bit of wall next to his left surround speaker is making the difference. First of all, happy to hear that adding the acoustic panels made a noticeable difference. I could expect it in a room like this where you've got these wood paneled walls, flat, hard, reflective surfaces. So that's good to hear to begin.
The first answer that comes to my mind is to put a small panel right next to your speaker where it's bouncing on that jut.
Yeah, to almost kind of like wrap some absorption material around that very corner. That's adjacent to that.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes to my mind is relocate the speaker to the jut. So that it's in front of
It's in front of your
basically.
seats at that point, right?
Oh, is it? No.
It would be, yeah. I mean, it already looks like they're, like, just going by where the right surround speaker is, that looks like it's maybe a little bit in front. I mean, it has to be because of where the door is.
Oh, I see. So the jut is actually in front of the speaker, not
That's
behind
right.
the speaker.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then the solution is to put something on, wrap some paneling or some absorptive material around that jut,
Yeah.
right where that speaker is going into.
Because the
These
panels...
are the little birds, right? The little birds?
these are the little birds that he's got. And the panels that he put up are not huge panels. Those look... I'm not quite sure what that exact size is, but it doesn't look like 2 feet by 4 feet to my eye. It looks smaller
No,
than
they
that.
look quite a bit smaller. Yeah, they look like 2 feet by maybe 1.5 feet or something like that.
So I'm assuming, cost was an object here. So, saying, okay, just wrap that whole corner in absorptive material.
But just relocate one for a small amount of time just to test it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just take one panel off the ceiling, because he's got some on the ceiling.
Yeah,
too.
that's right. Yeah, so cover
take
that very close by corner that's created by the wall.
And then if it turns out that makes the difference, then Bob's your uncle.
Yeah. Now, the only other thing I would suggest here is these are the little birds. They have those fully pivotable mounts. Nothing says you have to aim the speakers right at you, because it looks as though just going by where the surround backs and that right surround are aimed, it looks like he's got them kind of aimed very much at him. You could do more of an off angle type of thing.
Yeah.
Aim them more towards the back or more upward or something like that, so that the direct sound is not reacting with that extra bit of wall that you've got on the left side. Angle it away from there, because you have the fully pivotable mount, so you could do that.
Okay, sorry, I was reading the email. At the moment, he's using a single DefTech SuperCube 2000, 11-inch cube, 7.5-inch driver, and 2... Wait, isn't that what Ted's got?
Well, I think this is the model that replaced it, because that was the SuperCube 3, and this is the SuperCube 2000, and they sound identical. 11-inch cubes, 7.5-inch driver, 2 7.5-inch passive radiators, and a 650-watt amp. It's exactly the same specs.
Okay. Anyways, it claims to have a total frequency response of 20 hertz, 200 hertz. And he likes how small it is, and it's clean, tight sound. He would like to upgrade to dual subs, but should he simply get a second SuperCube 2000, or should he sell the one he has and go with two entirely new subs, maybe dual SVS PB-1000s, which he's heard can play lower and louder? It would cost him more to get 2 subs, so would it really be worth it? 2 new subs, at least. Would it be really worth it? It seems like he has based on what we're seeing here, an awfully small room, very tight dimensions. I don't think you can fit 2 PB-1000 or 2000s or whatever he wants to buy in here. Again,
well, I don't know. I mean, maybe
make the box. You gotta make the box.
Make the cardboard box. Yes.
First of all, the DefTech Supercubes are a well-respected subwoofer with a lot of people who have the kind of undying love for them that makes them spew hatred all over YouTube if you say anything bad about them. So I will simply say that response rate of down to 20 hertz to 200 hertz sounds like BS. Okay,
well,
I mean,
they didn't give it a minus 3 dB, plus or minus 3 dB. They're like total frequency response.
Right. It can play down to 20 hertz. The question is it audible to the human ear when it gets down there, or feelable by the human skin? Because a lot of times you can feel 20 hertz.
As we were talking about with those Fletcher Munson curves, even audible to you, because if it's not putting out 80 or 85 dB at 20 hertz, you're probably not even going to hear it with your human ears.
Right. So my question back to you would be, how important is it to you to get down to 20 hertz with authority? Right. Because if you want that, then you have to get 2 new subs. Adding a second sub to this will not do it.
Right.
You cannot increase the output. You can't increase or lower the frequency response of what this sub can do by adding a second one of it or a similar one of it. Now, if you want to get a second sub to put in here, and you can find another one of these bad boys, or heck, maybe you can ship yours off to Ted, since he's in the market for one right now.
Well, not really. He wants to replace his as well.
Well, then maybe you talk to Ted and get Ted to send you his. That would be fine, but you're not going to increase the low end of this. You're just going to get more even bass across all of your seats, which is great, which is something that we all want. But I think you should get 2 new subs that can play down to 20 hertz, and I think that the PB-1000s would be great.
Yes,
I also think the SB-1000s would be fine, and build the box. You just got to build the box of the PB-1000s to know for sure. Don't take a tape. Don't come to me and say, I took a tape measure and I held it up. It's going to be fine. It fits. I'm like, yeah, build the box. You do not understand the physical, the dimensions of this thing until you see it in your room. You're like, man, yeah.
That's a big old box.
That's a big old box. You know? And you got to leave room in the back so you can plug things in and stuff like that. I mean, it's bigger than it looks. So
yeah, all agreed. We don't actually know his entire room size, so
no.
It's possible. It's entirely possible they will fit, but yeah, just make sure they will. Yeah, I mean, if I'm just advising someone what I think will be best here, it would be really nice to get the 2 new subs that can genuinely play right down there to 20 hertz, give you something you haven't heard and haven't experienced before in here. I like the Super Cubes. They absolutely have a place in the market. They solve all kinds of problems when that's what you need. But if you can do it, I would replace the one you have with 2 new subs.
There you go. Oh, so the last question was, so would it really be worth it? And you can only answer that question, but it absolutely 100% would be worth it to me to get down to 20 hertz. that to me, there's a
experience unlike any other.
Right. It's not like something that you're going to spend every time you turn it on going, oh, yeah,
sure.
I'm so glad I did this. But every once in a while, you're going to be, oh, people, it's the thing that people are like, how come your couch is shaking? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the bass right now. Can you shut up? I'm watching the movie. And it's because my subwoofers are awesome.
I mean, it sure looks like he's got doors that he can seal this room, that this is not a gigantic room. It sure looks like it, which means
you're going to rock the paneling off this place.
You'll get actual pressurization for the first time, and that's something. When the jelly in your eyes starts jiggling, nothing else can really do that.
Yeah. John on Facebook. John's original Xbox One died. A repair would cost $130. So should he get it fixed or just buy an S or X? He doesn't have a 4K TV yet, but he does intend to get one at some point. What would be the best value? I hate this question so
It's a
much.
tough call, honestly.
I gotta be honest with you. How much are they brand new these days? When they're
an S, you can get a brand new S for about $250. I mean, they're listed as $300, but you can find it for $250 all over the place.
Right.
An X is $500.
Ugh.
You know,
I don't know that I would go X.
so I mean, I would only go X if you're a serious gamer.
Yeah.
And you're for sure going to get a 4K TV. I mean, that's who the Xbox One X is for. Because if you if you play games but you're not super critical about it, and you actually use the streaming services and the video services and stuff like that quite a bit, the S can do all the video side of things in 4K and HDR and all that. So as far as a video playback device, a streaming box, the S is just as good. And on the gaming side, it's rendering the games at 1080p within itself, and then it's scaling it up to 4K, which means it's the same thing as what your TV itself would do if you just fed it a 1080p signal, right? It's just scaling it up. Whereas the X is actually rendering the game in 4K or doing some other enhancements. But you still get the HDR from the S, which I think probably matters a bit more unless you're a really critical gamer. So I think it sort of answers, if you're a super critical gamer, the X might be worth it to you once you have a 4K TV. But otherwise, I would have to vote for the S. That would be my inclination. That's what I would get for myself. Because it's like $120 more than what the repair is going to cost, but you get the 4K and the HDR for the video and then HDR for the games too. That's mine.
Yeah,
I think that's
I'm going to have to agree. I begrudgingly, the part of me that there's a part of me that wants to say, why don't you just replace it with a 4K Blu-ray player and be done with this thing? Because you don't.
But that's not
but it's
Blu-ray
not a gaming
not a
system.
gaming device.
That's right. So I mean, because obviously I don't play games as much as I should. There are games I want to play. There are games I own that I have not played, but I haven't ever. The last time I played the game on the regular was when I was going through
Portal 2.
Oh no.
With me.
Yeah, we played it twice.
I know.
Okay, that is on the regular. The last time I played games on the regular was when I had my ACL surgery and I was stuck at home for 3 months.
Ah, there you go.
That's the last time, because I've got a life and kids and everything else, and I can't be bothered. But I'm going to have to go with Rob. And the reason look at a couple of reasons. One is, even if you don't use the Xbox as a gaming platform, even if you only use it to stream services and to play discs, I have had more problems with my standalone Ultra HD Blu-ray player with the streaming side of things than I have ever had with the Xbox. Now, the Xbox has all sorts of stupid audio issues, which I hate. But what's worse on the Ultra HD Blu-ray player is that I've had lip sync issues, which are infinitely worse than things coming out of the wrong speakers as far as I'm concerned. Drives me literally up the wall having to deal with the lips not being right. So I would have to say yes, go with the S. It's not that much of a upgrade. It's a premium over the 130. You're basically doubling it, and it's not really that much money. I mean, if you're spending 130, 250 is... I know it's double, but
plus,
it's not.
It's just a way nicer form factor. It's way smaller. It doesn't have that gigantic, stupid power brick separate from the console itself. The power thing is built into the S. So, yeah.
One of these days, someone's going to build an all-in-one box that's not dumb. It has not arrived yet, but somebody will do it. Clara. First-time caller, long-time listener, says Clara. That's awesome. Okay. Clara wants to know, what would we say is the best 7.2.4 pre-pro that includes all the latest video support, the Marantz AV7704 and the Onkyo PRZ5100, I'm sorry, look like top candidates, but is this the sort of thing where it would be best to wait for Cedia to see if there's anything new or some big price drops? Receivers are the best pre-pros, just in general. Don't look for pre-pros, because pre-pros are almost always out of date, because they put one out and they're like, okay, we're good. And
Marantz is pretty good, though, at keeping up. And honestly, Yamaha and Onkyo are
the new
close to
$5,000 receiver coming from
Marantz?
Is it Marantz? Which is the one that can do 13 channels?
That is Marantz. That is the AV8805 that can do 13.
But that's a receiver, right?
No, that is a pre-pro. That is a strictly pre-pro. On the Denon side, they have the 13-channel receiver, but Marantz has the 13-channel pre-pro.
See, I'd go with the Denon 13-channel receiver.
Over it's still $4,500.
I'm not saying it's cheap. 4, she didn't ask for what was the cheapest one. She asked for which one was the best one.
No, but 7.2.4. That's all that's requested. So why are we going to 13?
She said, "What's the best?" The best one is also has 7.2.4 and 7.2.6.
This is true. This is true.
But yes, receiver makes the best pre-pro. I know that this is going to be counterintuitive to you or to many people who are very much into separates, but that is true.
And with the forthcoming questions, we're going to be dealing some more with that. But yeah, for the vast majority of people, I 100% agree. AV receiver would be the way to go. Now, if 7.2.4 is for sure the most speakers you're ever going to use, you can definitely spend less than the $5,000 for the AV8805. I would actually point you to the older AV7703. Because you can get that at accessories for less for $1,200.
That's quite a bit cheaper.
That's way cheaper. So the 7704 is at accessories for less right now for $1,600 or $1,700, and then brand new it's like $2,300 or $2,400. So it's considerably more expensive. The only difference between the 7703 and the 7704 is that the 04 has Oro 3D already built in. You can add it to the 7703 with a $200 optional upgrade, but who's using Oro 3D anyway? And if your setup is 7.2.4, not you. And then and then the 04 gets eARC at some point in the future. The 03 doesn't.
Which is the enhanced audio return channel.
Enhanced audio return channel, and I don't even know how much you're going to use that. And that's about it.
Yeah.
So you were worried about having the latest video support. The 7703 already got the firmware update that added Dolby Vision and HLG support. So that's already taken care of. So that's the same model year as the X4300 that we're always recommending. That was the same model year. So I like the AV7703 as the top value choice. And then the question of, is this the type of thing you should wait for Cedia to see if there's new or big price drops? It doesn't tend to be the case for receivers and pre-pros. They don't seem to synchronize with Cedia like projectors do.
Right. Well, there is a case to be made because Cedia is a custom install thing. So a pre-pro might have a better chance of being announced at something like Cedia. Right. But nowadays with you can't have a secret anymore without it being leaked immediately. I think they've kind of given up on all that. They're like, hey, guess what? We got receivers. It's May.
Well, I mean, we're seeing all these receiver announcements right now as the lineups are coming out.
As soon as one comes out, everybody's like, well, we got one too. So, I don't really think you have to wait.
And I don't think you're going to see a huge price erosion on the 7703.
Nah,
because so if you get that, I think you're in good stead. $1,200.
Clara's speakers are Dynaudio Audience, towers, centers, and bookshelf surrounds. They are 4-ohm speakers and rather tough to drive. The room is around 5,400 cubic feet. It's 20 by 30 by 9.
I mean, that's actually a really nice size for a theater. That's a gorgeous size for a theater.
The previous Pioneer receiver wasn't able to handle the situation. It blew up, she said. I wonder if she had the ones with the Class D amps in it.
Probably, if it was Pioneer. Probably.
Yeah.
They ain't going to handle 4 ohms too happy. No,
they're not.
The case. Yeah.
So that's where the desire from separates come in. But 11 separate amps feels like it's getting obnoxious. And I would agree with you if by obnoxious you mean so freaking expensive, because that's what it is.
Big.
So if the front 3 speakers or maybe the fronts and surrounds are powered by a separate 3 or 5 channel amp, can we say with confidence that the AV receiver could power the remaining 6 or 8 surrounds and overhead speakers? Yep. I can say it pretty. I mean, it would depend on which receiver that you got, but any receiver that could do 7.2.4, I would have a hard time believing could not do your surrounds and your tops without.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not sitting that far away.
I mean, it certainly sounds like you already have 5 channels of amplification, because that seems to be the situation. Tower, center, bookshelf, surrounds. So we're really just talking about the surround backs and your overhead speakers. Now, your overhead speakers don't have. I don't know how far away you're sitting, but in a 20 by 30 foot room, you could be quite far away. But the overhead speakers are not. Because, a 9-foot ceiling is a little bit taller than normal, but not insanely so or anything. Yeah. So the distance from those to where you're sitting is not tremendous, and your surround back speakers don't get used very often. So if you already have 5 amps, I would have zero qualms saying that even in a quite large room like this, your overheads and surround backs can definitely be powered by any of the receivers that can do 11 speakers are pretty darn competent. So
yeah. I would have no problems, even if you wanted to run your surrounds on them as well. I would be fairly confident this would not be an issue. Now, it would be up to you, but yeah, that to me doesn't seem like it's much of an issue. So Clara's existing amps, apparently, why is apparently in parentheses?
Well, because this wasn't explicitly said, so I'm putting that in there.
Okay. Only have XLR inputs, so that is why receivers weren't really under consideration since they only have RCA outputs. But is there an elegant way to convert the RCA outputs to XLR, or would they have to go through a DI, a direct injection converter box?
I mean, that's what they're called. That's what. So let's say you're using a consumer level microphone or something with a line level output. You put it through one of these DI boxes to turn it into the pro level. So
no, you can buy a cable that's RCA on one side and XLR on the other.
But that doesn't do anything for the gain that's being expected by the XLR input. So I'm assuming that the amps that were purchased are like pro amps. Because any consumer level amps...
We're making a lot of assumptions here, man.
Well, how many consumer level amps have you seen that only have XLR, that don't have RCA inputs? I don't think I've ever seen one.
Yeah. I mean, audiophile grade stuff would be
maybe.
That way. Yeah, they would often eschew the RCA. I mean, it could very well be.
But I'm thinking these were maybe like Crown or Behringer or something like that, pro amps. So the reason I put the apparently in parentheses is because almost all of those pro level amps, you'll find a lot of them that do not have RCA inputs. That absolutely is the case. But usually, either they have separate TS inputs, the 1/4-inch jack, like the big headphone jack pluggy thing,
where you can actually plug that directly into the middle of the.
Or you can plug it. It's a combo jack. It looks like an XLR input, but it's a combo jack where you can put a TS input in there as well, or a TRS, a balanced version of the 1/4-inch jack. Usually that's the case. It's pretty rare to find one that genuinely only has XLR. So that's why I was not quite certain on that. It could certainly, I would 100% believe it doesn't have RCA, but I think it probably has a TS input. In that case, you can just use an RCA to TS cable, and there's really no problem. And if it has that input, like if it's the Crown, what are they called? I forget the name. The drive core.
Mm-hmm.
Those ones, or the Behringer, the iNukes, or the other Behringer ones, they all have the ability, either on their front panel or in their menu somewhere, to change the gain so that it's prepared for either the unbalanced signal, which is a weaker signal, or the balanced signal, which is a stronger signal. You can almost always change the gain as the settings and use a TS input. So I'm thinking the odds of having to use an RCA to XLR conversion is low. I don't think that's likely. So I just want you to check, because I don't know what amps you actually have, and I just want you to check on that, because I think this can be done.
I would agree.
No.
So, and a completely different option would be to replace the Dynaudio speakers with much more efficient speakers like JTR or Power Sound Audio. That's what some folks on AVS forums suggested. Of course they did. But Clara wasn't impressed during a JTR audition. There's definitely a distinctive horn-loaded sound, she says. Would Power Sound Audio or clips really be any better in that regard? What do we say? What is the overall best solutions? Well, okay. Going from something that's hard to drive to something that's super easy to drive just so that you can
go to an AV receiver.
Go to an AV receiver. It is not without its merits. But to me, if you're in love with your speakers, if you love your speakers, then there's no reason to switch your speakers when we can do this. I mean, even if your amps are these weird amps with injection, whatever, and you can't do anything with them, sell them and get a 3-channel amp from, anywhere, Emotiva, whatever.
Yeah.
Plug in your RCA cables and you're off to the races. So for me, if I've never heard JTR speakers, and you do have a big enough room where I could say, hey, if you want to get some sort of high efficiency horn loaded design,
well, like if you wanted to get
that could be something that's worthwhile.
Yeah, like if you wanted to get, say, a Denon X4400H and drive all 11 of the speakers using the 11 internal amps.
Yeah.
In this size of room, I would be like if that's for sure going to be what's driving the speakers, I would be suggesting looking at high efficiency speakers.
Yeah.
That would totally be the case. But yeah, I mean, since you auditioned the JTRs and weren't thrilled with them, I mean, the Power Sound Audio and the clips are not going to sound identical to JTR, but they're not going to sound like your Dynaudios. I can guarantee you that. They do have their own distinctive sound, and it's not going to sound like your Dynaudios. So yeah, I'm back to, I believe the amps you already have most likely can be used with an RCA to TS cable and then changing the gain inside of the amp. That's probably the case. If not, I agree, maybe sell them. I would point you to, so for example, Emotiva's A5175 amplifier. It's 5-channel, 175 watts, but that's into 8 ohms. Into 4 ohms, they deliver 250 watts. Which should be plenty sufficient. That's an $800 amplifier. So you drive your 5 speakers, your front 3 and your surrounds with that, and then drive the rest with, I mean, I would point you to an X4300 or an X4400, because that can handle your surround backs and your overheads just fine. If you really want to beef it up, you can go high. You can get an XPA, right? XPA 3 or XPA 5, or a Monolith. You could get a Monolith 5. Lots of power there.
This to me comes back down to what, unlike the forums where people are trying to convince you to buy the speakers that they own, or it's some sort of contest on whose advice do you follow.
Right.
I really feel like that's the case. Like, oh, I'm going to suggest this thing, and I know that if you do a search on here, you're going to find a lot of other people suggesting it, but if they take that suggestion and they do it and they love it, then I'm right, and I win. Point for me. We don't come from a place like that, Clara. We don't come from an
we
idea
mostly just want to save you money. That's mostly what we want to do.
That's mostly what we want to do. We want you to have the best possible audio experience for your budget or less. I guess that could be our tagline. The best audio experience for your money or less. Because we don't want you to spend any more money than you have to. You already own the speakers, so I think you like them. But maybe you don't. And if that's the case, well, then we can discuss. And if you get new speakers, figure out what speakers you want first. If you really want to switch your speakers, then find those speakers and come back to us. And please tell us what amps you have so that we can figure that part out.
But everything sounds like the current speakers and amps are working just fine.
Yeah,
it's just that there's only 5 of them right now, and we need to expand to 11. That seems to be the case.
That's right. And as far as your Dynaudio speakers, I mean, I feel like matching them to surround backs that are of a different type might be a little bit easier than something like a JTR or Eclipse or something like that, where we're going to get into that. I mean, I don't necessarily totally buy into the horn-loaded sound, but there is definitely an efficiency issue when you start talking about those speakers versus other speakers. So I am... the Dynaudios, I think, if you love them, you should stick with them.
Right.
Make sure your amps work, or get amps that do work, and then it's just then you're done. I mean, I don't think this is much of an issue.
The very last thing I'll say is, let's just say the existing amps truly do only have XLR.
Right.
We know those amps work with your current speakers. You could get the AV7703, $1,200 compared to all the other things you were considering. That's a cost savings. So you could get the AV7703 that has the XLR outputs. At that point, you just need 6 more channels of amplification. But like we've been saying, an AV receiver could handle the surround backs and overheads just fine, which means a lower powered amplifier also could do that.
Right,
so
sure.
an Emotiva A700, right? $600. Yes, that's more expensive than what we're suggesting of just getting an AV receiver by quite a lot, the combo of the AV7703 and the A700 amp, but it's actually less expensive than just a brand new A7704 that you were already considering. So in total, that's a solution where you still keep XLR inputs and you solve all your issues.
So lastly, she asks, has Tom been dropping hints that he wants to stop doing the podcast? Home Theater Geeks got canceled, and HD guys keep saying it's getting harder for them to justify keeping their podcast going ever since the Amazon affiliate program slashed their revenue. They had revenue? Oh, yeah. Can we assume... I'm not laughing because I don't think they deserve it. I'm laughing because we don't...
we never did the Amazon affiliate.
We never did the affiliate thing. That's true. That's true. I don't even know how that thing works. Can we just assure everyone that AVRant isn't going to disappear? I cannot assure you of that. I can't.
If both of us get struck by lightning, that's going to be a problem.
If one of us gets struck by lightning, that's going to be a problem. So let's be honest. If my house gets struck by lightning, that's going to be an issue. I can tell you this. I mean, sometimes you hear me complaining, and it's some of it's tongue-in-cheek, and some of it's just I'm usually recording very late at night. This is much nicer. It is very weird. I'm in a blacked-out room, my home theater, and I feel like after this, I'm going to go to sleep because my whole body is like podcast.
That's what you do,
sleep,
yeah.
Podcast, sleep. Podcast. Get yourself a beer, drink your beer, watch a little bit of YouTube, go to sleep. But that's not what's going to happen. After this, I got to go pick up my kid from the rec center because it's where he's been, my youngest son. So I have no plans of canceling this podcast. I mean, we've been doing it for over 10 years. Most of it just for the love of doing it. I have no intention of canceling the podcast. If I was ever going to cancel a podcast, it would have been after Dina left.
Yep.
That was the breaking point right there, where I was very broken. I mean, I was an emotional wreck after that. I was not a lot of fun to be around. So I kept the podcast going then, and I have no intention of stopping it now. My wife, I think she fluctuates between it's an inconvenience to our family and, hey, you've got a platform online. There's no reason to stop having that platform online for when you do things that people might be interested in, like write books or start new mobile climbing wall businesses. So she is supportive enough that there's no external pressure for me to stop the podcast. So yeah, I can't assure you that this podcast won't stop, but I can assure you that I have no intention of quitting anytime soon.
I have no intentions of going anywhere, so it won't be me.
There you go. Joel asks, do tweeters degrade and lose some of their high-frequency output and extension over time? I feel like we need to read the second part of his question so we can understand where he's coming from, because the answer is not really.
Shouldn't.
Could be. I mean, it depends on how you use them and how many little fingers have poked them in and stuff like that.
Right, there's that, yes, yeah. Damage is possible, for sure.
But as long as you've been operating them under normal tolerances, which would be, not deforming them by clipping the signal or clipping the speaker clipping. There's no reason why it should degrade over time. The one thing that could degrade, depending on what type of driver you have, is the surround material. Which
on
degrade.
tweeters, though,
that's usually a magnetic neodymium liquid
ring.
or whatever. No, ferrofluid that they have in there, which doesn't ever really degrade.
Yeah.
So
I have one other outlandish idea, but we'll get to that later. So
yeah. Shouldn't.
Shouldn't.
So Joel is using Paradigm Mini Monitor V4 front speakers on stands along with a CC 370 V4 version 4 center. They're 15 years old now. That's why I said we need to read the second part. Right. And they all use the exact same tweeter. He used the Odyssey Editor app, and when he looked at the measured results, the front, left, and right speakers have quite a bit more high-frequency roll-off than the center, especially the front right speaker. He was hearing this difference too, and the Odyssey before graphs just seemed to confirm what he was hearing. To his ears, Odyssey did a nice job of correcting his response, with the front, left, and right speakers sounding clearer, more detailed, and more forward after the Odyssey was engaged, but it just has him worried that tweeters in those Paradigm Mini monitors might be aging or failing in some way. And before we blame it all on microphone placement, you know us so well, sir, he made sure that there was a completely clear line of sight from each speaker to the mic, and even took the mini monitor speakers and his Odyssey receiver into a different, much larger room and pointed the speakers straight at the mic to get the room reflections out of the equation as much as possible. And even in that scenario, the before measurements were similar in the treble. So is this a cause for concern? Well, the fact that it can be corrected usually means that it's not to me, that doesn't mean it's not a cause for concern. Now,
yeah, and corrected not only in its prediction, but you said you heard it. So
yeah, so the fact that it can be corrected means that whatever's going on with it is not so systemic that the tweeter can no longer play those frequencies. For whatever reason, these tweeters are not playing. You know, the ones in your front, left, and right are not playing the high end as evenly as
quite as loud, actually,
or quite as loud as the center is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what could be causing this? Because you can correct it, meaning that it basically just by adding a little volume or a little boost to those frequencies, the speaker is able to do it. It's just not doing it au naturel without the whatever. So could this be the design decision on Paradigm's part? Could be. Could this be that there was some tweeter variance in their
just unit to unit variation? Yeah,
could be.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and to me, that second one is the most likely culprit. Mm-hmm. That the tweeters themselves have a tolerance, and they test the tweeters as they come off the line, but they're not testing every single one. I mean, some manufacturers do. They take their speakers, they put that.
They cost a lot more though.
Yeah, so Bang & Olufsen does this with some of their speakers. They come off the line, they go into a room. The room is completely sealed, and then they play something through it. They measure it. Then they take another speaker, they put it in there, and they measure it. And if they match, they put them together. If they don't match, then I don't know, alarm goes off or something, and they have to figure out what's wrong. But they do this to make sure that the speakers are perfectly matched together. Sounds like these two speakers have similar roll-offs, but one's a little bit worse. Mm-hmm. But have similar roll-offs, and therefore to me that just tells me that the tweeters that were put into these have similar disabilities as far as their manufacturing, but aren't necessarily bad,
right?
Because I mean
these aren't like the flagship series from Paradigm. These are not quite the entry level series. That's the cinema series at this point, but these were the monitor series, one step up. So to first say, I'm getting my
coffee. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I mostly think everything is fine. That's my number one suspected thing. But I'll throw out my one theory of what could possibly be happening over time, because this is if Tom could actually hear me, he can't hear. He doesn't have his headphones on right now, so I hopefully won't have to repeat all this for him. But you will find on the inside of the speaker, you would have to dismantle it and somehow get to the back of the tweeter. You have the internal wires that are plugged into the tweeter, because when we're seeing high frequency roll off like this, now that can just be the natural thing, that's just what it does, but one other cause of high frequency roll off can be that the resistance within the system is slowly getting a little bit higher. And higher resistance can be from really skinny wires, but it can also just be from a loosening electrical contact. And that's the one thing that I think could be happening over time. So inside, the internal wires of the speaker are going to be attached to the tweeter. And 15 years old, it could just be that that contact of that wire has worked itself a little bit loose. Stuff is moving inside the speaker. These are ported speakers. Air is moving in and out. Could have come a little bit loose, or I don't want to say corroded or something because it's highly unlikely. But
I don't think so.
If it's not terribly difficult, I don't know how hard it is to open up these speakers and have a look inside. But the idea that one of the contacts, the wire contacts that connect to the speaker, has just come a little bit loose because they're just a compression fit. They're just a friction fit on those inside contacts. They're not soldered in or hardwired or something. That's not entirely out of the question. And that would raise the resistance of the overall system a little bit and might give you some more high-frequency roll-off. I almost hate to say it because people are going to get all paranoid and start opening up their speakers, and don't do that. This is probably fine, but that's a possible explanation.
Yeah, don't open up your speakers. As someone who's had to open speakers many, many times, Don't open speakers. No good can come of it. Because afterwards, you're always worried whether or not you tightened everything down.
Or you'll forget to put the gasket back in around the driver.
My favorite is when I had to take out, not had to, but when I did the review or something of the EP500. It wasn't a review. I don't know why I had to take it apart. I think maybe to get Legos out of it.
Could be.
But there is a wire in there that goes from the amp, then the amp has a complete back on it, to the driver. And that wire is wrapped in like foam or whatever, but if you don't tuck it just right...
It'll rattle?
It'll rattle in there. Drove me crazy for so long. I was like, what is going on? I've broken my speaker. So anyways, I got my coffee, so I'm happy.
Okay, very good.
Most of the available advice about using the EQ is saying to use it for the bass, but to avoid using it for the mid-range and treble. The Odyssey Editor app can allow him to do that by default, but by default, Odyssey makes changes to the whole frequency range. And as he mentioned with the measured and heard high-frequency roll-off of his mini monitor speakers, he prefers the after results where Odyssey had boosted the treble. He mostly listens to stereo music, so the mini monitors have played a lot more than the CC370 Center. So how does this square all of the advice with the situation? The better room correction programs like Dirac or Anthem, ARC, would be using better microphones and wouldn't be touching the treble. I don't necessarily think that's true, but go on. And he hears the high-frequency roll-off that Odyssey's measurements seem to pick up just fine, even with its cheap mic. And he winds up preferring Odyssey's after results. But then maybe his mini monitors are just getting worn out. What's our take? Okay. So a lot of the advice of, EQing, only EQing the bass, that sort of thing. I mean, that's just not what most room correction systems do. In fact, most of them do it above what we would call, the subsonic bass, the real low stuff. They're much higher. They're in the mid range and upper bass range. And EQing of the treble is something that's done actually quite regularly with these programs, not all of them, but these programs, and is done constantly. I mean, come on. How many of you guys, and I know some of you are old enough to remember this, remember the Kenwood, like Sears in Redbox catalogs, and they would have like those Kenwood decks that would all come together, a record player, and then a dual cassette, and then the EQ.
Your
and
graphical EQ with the slider, up and down slider.
And everybody would make the smiley face.
Uh-huh.
What do you think the smiley face was? The smiley face was boosting the treble and boosting the bass and cutting the mid. I mean, that's all it was. And so to say that there is this, this idea that we shouldn't touch the top end, it's just, I mean, if you are sitting in one seat with one mic and you were trying to fix your top end to be absolutely dead straight, yeah, you could do something that could damage your tweeter. You could. But more than likely you won't. And that's not what these apps are doing. They're looking at more than one measurement in more than one place, and they have limits to how much they can boost or they can cut. So I think that you liking what you heard answers the question. That's the answer. The answer is, hey, I liked what I heard. Why, should I do it? Yeah.
I've been using the default Odyssey curves for ages, and Yeah, I mean, I've usually preferred the results. Now I'm careful with the measurements. I make sure I have the clean line of sight, because I think where a lot of this comes in is getting the measurements done properly is way easier said than done. You know, they try to make it sound super simple because they're aiming it at your everyday consumer. But the problem is, you know, if you have the seat back in the way, which of course that's an easy thing to do, that'll mess up the treble, because the treble is very directional, very, very small frequencies, very, very short wavelengths that will absolutely bounce off of your seat back and do all kinds of weird things and could potentially do more harm than good. So the advice of let's focus on EQing the bass and sort of ignore the mid-range and treble, it avoids a lot of problems that are basically user error in terms of how the microphone was set up. If you're careful with it,
problem
it works
between
really well.
keyboard and chair. A lot of those, a lot of those errors.
Yeah. So I think you like the results. Continue with that. As I say, I think everything is fine. If you want to be a crazy person, you can check the contacts on the Twitter. Don't hate me if something goes wrong. I warned you not to really do it, but I'll throw it out.
I'm telling you right now, don't open them speakers up, boss.
I know.
Don't do it.
It's not going to be good times, but there it is. We've said it.
I love coffee mug. See that?
You do.
I love coffee. I did not buy that because I have self-respect, but I did get it bought for me, and I do kind of love it a little bit. All right, Infinite Gary. Infinite Gary asks, have we ever heard of the Dynaudio Focus 20XD self-powered speakers? Nope.
Nope, but, I have not.
We do know somebody who likes Dynaudio quite a bit.
We do?
Her name is Clara. If so, do we have any comments about their sound quality? Nope. Gary wants to purchase them for when he's using his stationary bike. Knock yourself out. Looks like you already did.
It looks like he already did. He sent the photo. It is Gary, after all. We know he does not wait around.
He doesn't wait around for the answers. So anyways, let us know how you feel about them. The Dynaudio 20XDs include a digital coax audio inputs along with 192 kilohertz, 24-bit DACs according to the manual, and they have their own volume control with a small remote. So if he just wants to play CDs, can he connect the digital coax output of any CD player directly to these speakers without any other equipment or wiring needed? Yes.
Yes, you can.
That's the whole point.
Not only that, in the manual, it mentions that the only way to play back 192 kilohertz sampling, which for CDs is completely unnecessary, but let's just say you want to, the only way you can do it is with a direct digital coax connection, straight from the source, right into the speakers. That's the only way. All the other methods are limited to 96 kilohertz, which is also way more than you need for CDs, but there it is.
I mean, it's natively 44.1.
44.1 on a CD, that's right.
So everything else is just duplicating the same bits over and over again.
Yeah, but this is great. The bits are coming right off the disc, being sent digitally out of the player, straight into the speakers. The speakers have their own volume control, their own digital to analog converter, their own amplification. That's all built into them. And they have a remote, so you can change the volume easily. Perfect.
Yep, done. Reading through his Oppo's player's manual, he saw... he only saw mention of lossless audio in reference to his HDMI output. So does he somehow have to use an HDMI output to get lossless CD audio, or can the digital coax audio connection do it? Well, okay, so lossless audio is referring to specific formats, including DTS HD, Master Audio, and Dolby True HD.
Correct. Okay,
those are lossless. But on your CD, if you lossless in your case is 44.116 bit, because that is what the ones and zeros are encoded on it. When you output, as you can on your disc, you can set your player to do something higher than that. What is it, 96, 48, something like that.
Yep.
And all it's doing is taking that 44.1 and 16 and up converting it, meaning instead of having a 1 for 1, it's giving you two. They're multiplying both sides by some number. What's the point of that? There is no point of that, Gary. There's no point. 44.1 is lossless for your CD, and it goes out just fine over your coax.
And the important part is that PCM audio is lossless audio. That is completely uncompressed. Nothing done to it.
Way. Yeah.
What goes in is what comes out.
It may have been compressed at the studio side before it was encoded into 44.1, but you can't uncompress it off of the disc into what the studio guy was listening to. It's not. It doesn't exist. It's gone. It's deleted. Yeah. So just doubling the number of ones and zeros does not enhance the resolution. It's the same resolution. It's still 44.1.
Yeah, but just to clear it up, your digital coax connection, that is an SPDIF connection. That stands for Sony Philips Digital Interface. And the Sony Philips Digital Interface is limited to Dolby Digital, We now have it working with Dolby Digital Plus, DTS, so those are all lossy, and then it's limited to 2 channels of uncompressed PCM. It can't carry multi-channel PCM. It can only carry 2 channels, but that's fine for CD because that's 2 channels. That's lossless.
So if you were to use a separate preamp, don't use a separate preamp. You don't have to.
No need.
Would it be best to send digital out of the CD player and then also send digital out of the preamp to the self-powered speakers, or should he send? Why would that even work? What is the preamp doing?
Volume control at that point.
Yeah, it's not doing anything. There's nothing. No. Okay, just stop. I'm not even reading this question. Because you go from the CD to all the decoding stuff that would be in the preamp is in the speaker.
It's
you
in
don't
the speaker.
need it. It's there. So you just put
another way,
the
these
preamp away.
speakers have a preamp built into them. That is the other way to think of it. Yeah.
That's the other way to think of it, yeah. So if he uses a Blu-ray player like the Oppo, could he connect concert Blu-rays in addition to CDs sometimes? He could play concert Blu-rays in addition to CDs. But most concert Blu-rays include soundtrack options, often surround sound mix in Dolby True HD or DTS HD Master Audio, plus a separate 2-channel LPCM soundtrack. Which option would be better to use? And if he selects the surround sound option, which he won't, will he lose any sound like maybe the 0.1 LFE channel, or will it get folded down to the 2-channel output of that self-powered speaker that the self-powered speaker can handle? Well, self-powered speaker can't take a surround sound.
No, I mean, it won't take a 5.1 signal.
Right.
But the player can be set to just output everything as 2-channel.
Right, and you should be, which is what you're going to do anyways.
Yeah.
But the best thing to do if you're playing a Blu-ray, and it has a separate 2.0 LPCM track, you should set it to that. Select that. But it still is not guaranteed that it's going to put out that same lossless over the coax or optical or whatever he's using. I forgot already.
Coax.
Because that sometimes will only go out over HDMI. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Because
what?
You should,
no, none of that. No. I mean, if you're listening, let's say you just select the Dolby True HD soundtrack and it's 7.1 on the disc. With a player like the Oppo, as long as you're using the digital coax output and you've set the digital output to send out PCM audio, which is one of the options, it's going to decode the Dolby True HD perfectly. It's going to mix all of that 7.1 audio into 2 channels, and it's going to send it out of your digital coax output. You have lost nothing. No sounds will be lost. No quality will be lost. You're getting all the sound in that 7.1 soundtrack out of 2 channels. It's all going to be there. So I would say on those concert Blu-ray discs, usually the 5.1 or 7.1 mix and the completely separate, all on its own 2-channel PCM mix that is an audio option within the menu of the Blu-ray, they very often are different mixes. That is very often the case. So it's a personal preference. They're usually not just taking one of them and turning it into the other. They're usually doing 2 completely separate mixes on those.
Might be worth listening to both of them.
Listening to both, yeah. But the honest answer is you can listen to either, and it's perfectly fine. You're probably going to need some kind of display in there to make all your menu selections, though. It's kind of hard to do without a TV to look at on a Blu-ray.
So he has a Technics CD player that claims to have 4-time oversampling. What is that? That's where it reads it, and then it reads it again, and it reads it again, and reads it again.
Well,
yeah, reads it. It oversamples it. The idea here is that it's kind of immaterial, I think, for most standalone players. For me, the oversampling, the making sure that the bits are right, not the bits, but the sounds are right, had to do with skips. Right?
No, oversampling is when you're just taking the 44.1 and like upping it to, well, in this case, what would it be 176.4 would be 4 times over. That would be 176.4 kilohertz.
I thought, what am I thinking of? Oversampling, where it was, because when you're in a car, sometimes the disc will skip, so that it has a delay of a couple of seconds before you press play.
That's just a buffer.
Well, I'm thinking it had a name. Anyways,
I don't know. No, oversampling is when you're just doing the upping of the sampling rate. So it's 44.1 on the disc itself. Yeah, and that's where you're getting the 192 kilohertz DAX or whatever. Right? In this case, 4 times exactly would be 176.4. That's 4 times 44.1. Why would you do such a thing? Well, if you're going to apply any sort of tone controls or something like that in the digital domain, it is nice to just have extra superfluous bits to work with, then you can filter it afterward to get rid of any potential noise that you might have added to the signal with your digital manipulation of that signal, and then send it on its merry way. So that's why you might have oversampling. The chances of you actually hearing anything, if you haven't touched any sort of tone controls or bass management or something like that, is 0. If you haven't touched the signal and manipulated it, it's exactly the same.
So Gary tried 4 different disc players, always using the digital coax audio output. He swears he heard some differences. What could possibly cause that?
Psychology.
Yeah, well, psychology. Let's say all things being equal, that the output, the speakers reacted exactly the same to the input as it was given out. There wasn't any voltage differences or whatever it was that could possibly have made some difference as it came out as far as volume is concerned. The volume coming out of all 4 of these players was exactly the same, and you said everything the digital coax output, and there was no tone going on. There's no tone control happening. The differences would 100% be in your head.
Yeah, because it's the bits off the disc and out of a digital coax output, unless you have the ability to manipulate that signal inside the player. The line level is even the same. It's not even like an amplitude thing.
Yeah, I can't. Like I said, I can't imagine anything other than the tone control having something to do with this. Meaning that there is some sort of EQing that's going on.
Yeah. Or the ability to change the volume inside the player. That sometimes exists too. So if one is louder,
rarely with CD players, but it is possible. So yeah. That's about the only cause I can think of that's real. The other causes are, it took me 10 minutes to change this thing around, and now I've forgotten what I actually heard, since audio memory is around 3 seconds long instead of 10 minutes, and therefore I think I hear something. Yeah. So in a different room, he's using a preamp that only has analog inputs. So obviously that means he's using the analog audio outputs from the player whatever player he uses in that room. Would the audiophile stereo analog outputs of the Oppo 205 player sound, audibly better?
Nope.
I mean, they have the best, right? They have basically the best of everything on there.
Yeah.
And I still don't think that it's going to make any real difference.
Nope.
Not audibly.
Nope. It is possible to have analog outputs that are noisy. We've all seen that from a computer or something like that. That is possible. And yes, you will have very, very low, hardly any noise from the Oppo 205. So in that regard, it could be better than something. But compared to he already has a 203 or something like that, right? Like, compared to that, it's not going to make any audible difference.
Right. So progress is continuing on LG's rollable OLED technology. They showed an Ultra HD resolution 77-inch version targeted at the commercial market at the recent Society for Informational Display conference. Everybody's got a conference.
They do.
We should have an AVRant conference. It'd just be me and you.
12 people.
They say it can be rolled into a 7.3-inch diameter tube without affecting functionality. It can even be on and showing images while fully or partially rolled. And on top of that, they had a version that's also 40% transparent. Are we excited about this display technology? What do we think about it as a potential applications for home use? How often have you thought to yourself, you know what I really want to do with my TV? I would like to roll it up. Other than having a screen like a projection screen that rolls down.
Yeah.
That's the only real application I see for this in the home.
I mean, there are lots of people who are like all the home design magazines and stuff, they never have a TV.
Right.
So
they have. I love how they have a TV on the wall, and you know that thing does not work.
Oh, there's no wires.
There's no wires going to it ever.
There's no wires going to the speakers. Yeah, there's nothing. But no, I mean, given how much some people hate a visible television in any room, the idea that you could just roll the thing into the ceiling or into a credenza or something like that's kind of appealing.
But I think we're a long way from that being an affordable option when you compare it to projectors.
But I mean, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah. This idea of a display you can roll up or bend around something. I mean, the transparent display. I mean, how cool would it be that, like, all the stuff we've seen in movies, right, where your bathroom mirror is also a display? Well, you could do something like that. They
still have that. They have that right now.
Well, I know.
You can do that right now.
But, like your actual windows to the outside also turn into displays and stuff. Like, it's all the stuff we've seen in movies. This is one of the ways you can make a lot of it come true.
Yeah. We'll see. Mauricio's room is 11 by 25 by 8, so about 2,200 cubic feet. He's running a 7.1.4 setup using Revell Concerta speakers, and at the moment he has a single paradigm DSP 3200 sub, which is a 12-inch driver with 300 watt amp that claims 22 hertz DIN. I hate the DIN.
Minus 10 decibels.
Yeah, DIN. Was it something in room? Is that what that means? Or in... I don't remember what DIN stands for.
Oh, it's a German. It came from a German thing, yeah.
Anyway, he wants to upgrade to dual subs, but should he get a second paradigm, or should he replace what he has with 2 subs? I think you should replace it with 2 subs.
We've been saying this to everyone else, and we're not gonna change it in this case. That 22 hertz DIN, like I say, that's negative 10 dB, and I mean, it's funny because this is quite a... I mean, it's not a small sub. It's not tiny. It's not, like, underpowered. 12-inch driver is perfectly normal.
Yep.
I mean, remember when...
amp is response is it's got DSP in it, obviously, because it's the name. And how do you get negative 10 at 22 hertz?
But that's what I was going to say. Remember when all subwoofers were like this? Because it was the speaker companies, and they had their own sub, and none of them played down to 20 hertz. None of them. And it wasn't until we got these internet direct brands coming out that we started getting these what we truly consider to be great subwoofers these days. This was typical. But if you can replace these with 2 new subs, these don't hit down to 20 hertz.
What is this guy's name?
Mauricio.
Oh, okay. I just got an email from a Mauricio. I mean, how many Mauricios can I possibly know? But it was not him.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, you should get 2 subs, and you should get 2 better subs, and you should get whatever. He's considering duals of the HSU or the SHU VTF-2 Mark V, SVS PB-1000s, or Rhythmic LV-12Rs. What would we recommend most highly? I would recommend the cylinder subs, but all of these are very good. Yes. I think you go with any of these. You build the box because they're all similar sizes, not too far off. But build a box that's at least representative of all 3 of these bad boys, and then somewhere in the middle maybe, and then or maybe build the biggest one, and then move it around and see how it fits in your room. But seeing that you already have a sub that's not small. What you have, I think, is a little bit smaller than what these subs are, though, isn't it?
Yes, a little bit, but it's not. Yeah. This case, we're not going nuts.
You are unlike the previous people we've talked to, where we talked to, we're like, you either build the box for sure. I'm like, you should still probably build the box, but you already have an idea of what you're getting yourself into.
But he is going from 1 to 2, so let's make sure they're both fit. I agree. Yeah. The form factor of the PC-2000 would be really nice, but in terms of price, given your room size, here I think the HSU VTF-2 Mark V, 2 of those. That is the least expensive of these options, and it is like ideal for your room size. That's almost exactly what I would point you to. So I would recommend that most highly, as long as the size and the form factor will work for you.
All right, we'll do Jeremy last here.
Okay.
Jeremy's TV supports HDR10 and Dolby Vision, and his sound system supports Dolby True HD and DTS HD Master Audio. He has an Apple TV 4K and a Sony X800 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which is, I got the 700, right? Is that what I got?
That's right.
I think.
But the 800 is actually older. The 700 is newer. Yeah.
The Apple TV 4K supports Dolby Vision, but only outputs lossy Dolby Digital, or it can internally decode Dolby Digital Plus and output it as 7.1 LPCM. The Sony X800 outputs lossless bitstream audio, but only supports HDR10, no Dolby Vision. Mm-hmm. Does he have a TV?
Yes, his TV supports HDR10 and Dolby Vision.
Okay. Yeah. So given the choice, if a movie is available on both Ultra HD Blu-ray and on iTunes and Dolby Vision, which version would we rather watch? 100% the Ultra HD Blu-ray version.
Oh, yes, the disc. Without question.
100%. This streaming is never going to be as good. It's just never.
It's a much lower bit rate, much more highly compressed video.
Yeah.
And it is streaming. You can't download anything that is 4K on the Apple TV 4K. It is being streamed, so you are somewhat at the mercy of your internet connection. If you have a drop in bandwidth at some point, it's going to fluctuate. So the Ultra HD Blu-ray never changes. That is a consistent thing. So really, the only thing here is HDR10 versus Dolby Vision. That's the only difference you're talking about, which, by the way, can be entirely solved by getting a new player at some point. So that's one way, although, of course, there's many Ultra HD Blu-rays that only have HDR10 on the disc, whereas for whatever reason, Apple has secured the rights to have Dolby Vision versions of them on almost all of their movies. But no,
sure, a very careful conversion process was undertaken to make sure
that's right.
Was the best. I'm sure that happened.
No, as much as I do like Dolby Vision, and I kind of wish it was the only HDR format and all of that had been settled beforehand because it would have been easier for consumers, HDR10 still looks entirely good. It's not like you're gonna have the Dolby Vision right next to it to watch it. The more consistent and higher bit rate makes much more of a difference, and you get the lossless audio from the disc. So disc all the way.
All right, that's it. Who else we got, Rob?
We have Luke, and
who has a whole bunch.
He does, and Nick, and Curtis, and Andrew, who wrote to us on Facebook. That is everyone. We'll be answering first up next week.
All right. You guys will, if you did not hear your name and you had sent us a question in the last couple of weeks.
Well, by Sunday night.
Yeah, you need to send it again to question@avrant.com. If you want your question answered, please email us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Marty and Karl, who went to www.avrant.com and clicked on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and left us a PayPal donation, along with our 62 patrons from patreon.com. Your monies go into our coffers to support our podcast, and we very much appreciate it.
Yeah, Marty, Karl, thanks for the donations, and 62 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thank you so much.
I also want to thank Toby for talking us up to accessories for less.
Yeah, Toby, congrats on those 2 AV receiver purchases.
And for AV Rant, I'm Tom Andring.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.